now, and this is Justin Goldner, who's a bass player and a producer and songwriter. He is in the house band for America's Got Talent. So we are really excited to have him with us today, and he's gonna share some tips and tricks about his amazing career. Okay, Justin, so tell us about your favorite activity as a bass player. Do you enjoy playing in the studio more, or do you enjoy big crowds?
Well, I kind of like to have it both ways. I really enjoy both. I feel very at home in the studio. I like the process of creating music, of putting together arrangements and coming up with a finished product. That's really cool. But at the same time, the activity of playing live, of interacting with audiences, of making people move and dance to the music is really critical. And I think that getting to do both of them, they really inform each other.
Okay, great. Well, what's the biggest crowd you've ever played?
The biggest crowd? I don't know. I guess a couple of years ago I played at this festival, Spring in the Blues, down in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And the numbers that they said were like in the hundreds of thousands, but I think that was like not all at the same time.
Wow, that's cool.
So I don't know, yeah.
It's rewarding.
It's very rewarding. I mean, honestly, some of the most rewarding shows have been the ones where I've gotten to interact with people on a more personal basis. You know, in smaller rooms. I mean, when you play in front of a big crowd, it can become kind of faceless. You can't really see everybody who's there. Yeah. Obviously, it's very exciting. But at the same time, when you play in a smaller room, you really get to feel the reactions of the individual people, which can be really special.
That's fun. I know that many of you are playing at home and kind of shy to get out there and actually get the reaction, but you gotta try it, because you know you're doing it not only for yourself, but you create for people, right? So
and the way people react, I think, is really critical. I don't know, it can give you motivation to keep playing, to keep practicing, I mean, as a bass player, I feel like my job most of the time is to make people dance, right? To make people move. And so without that sort of feedback, or with that feedback, you get to be a better player.
Yeah, what if you make a mistake and everybody's scared of making a mistake, and what do you do?
Somebody told me once that the best musicians are the ones who cover up their mistakes the best. I don't know if that's true.
That's true.
But everybody makes mistakes. You gotta throw yourself in, and you know, you sink 1,000 times, and the 1,001st time, you know, maybe you swim.
Yeah, that happened to me a couple of times when I was forgetting lyrics while singing on the stage, and it was kind of mortifying. But yeah, like I said, if you can, find your way around it, pretend nothing happened, I think that's the best way.
Sure, and you learn from your mistakes as well. I mean, a mistake is a much better opportunity to learn than doing something right. So
that's awesome. Well, let's see what Justin has to share with us. You know, that's your bass.
This is my bass. This is one of my basses. This bass was actually given to me by a mentor of mine, a really fantastic bass player who I would check out. Her name is Michelle Indegliocello. She was a real inspiration to me.
Girls.
She's the best. She's the reason I started playing bass.
Oh, wow, see? There's always a woman involved.
Yeah.
In someone.
There you go.
Alright, well, you know that some of you are beginners, some of you are already further on the way to the proficiency level. So, just let's give a couple of tips or tricks for both, right?
Well, I think that's something that's really relevant to people, whether they're just getting started or have been playing for years and years. Listening is a really critical thing, and that goes as far as listening to a lot of different kinds of music, and having a wide vocabulary in that way, but also listening to everything else that's going on when you're playing music. And so when you're practicing, that can be tough because you're just playing by yourself. But so for that reason, I always like to play with a metronome or a drum machine or play along the tracks, but something, because everything that you play has meaning only within the context of the song itself and what everybody else is playing. So for listening, I don't know, I love playing along to records. Some of my favorite songs, I'll learn the bass parts and then I'll play along to them. A lot of the time I'll do that with the bass turned down so that I don't actually hear myself, so that I can hear the bass part that is being played on the album and try and match the feel of that part.
Oh, that's interesting.
and then once I've learned that part, and I feel like I can play it without really thinking about it, I'll try and listen to some of the other parts on the album as well, especially the drums. I mean, bass and drums, everybody says this, but bass and drums really go hand in hand. And the drums maybe drive the band, or I would say the drums are sort of like pulling the cart, but if you as a bassist play in relation to the drums and really pay attention to what the drums are doing, you're driving the band. You make everything lock in together and feel just right. I mean, something I like to pay a lot of attention to when I'm listening is where, well, it's in rock music or in Western pop music, is where the snare falls, where the kick and the snare falls. You want to lock in with the kick drum, so whatever the bass part is, you know, let's say we're playing a song. It's funny to do this without any other instruments, but yeah, if we're playing a song, you know, the drummer might be playing. So you want to lock in with the kick, right? And that is sort of that's a pattern around which you can pivot, but to know exactly where that is really important. And then on the other hand, the snare can be the release of your notes. And paying attention, this was sort of like an epiphany for me, is realizing that the duration of your notes and the release of your notes is just as important as where they start. So what I like to do is vary where the notes cut off, the release of them, but particularly with the snare drum, right? So let's go with that same beat. I'm going to play a couple different feels. I'm going to play the same groove, so the notes all start in the same place, but first I'm going to make them long and maybe cut them off right with the snare. Actually, first I'm going to make them long, just like completely sustained. Then I'm going to cut them off with the snare, and then I'm going to make them short, and maybe find some other places to cut them off too. And you'll see how much variation you have just by changing how long the notes are.
Let's hear it.
So. So that's all long notes, right? Let's gonna cut off with the snare. Right, and then short. 2, 3, 4. So those are just 3 variations, and honestly, you can be sensitive to where your notes cut off and alter where they cut off throughout the bar, throughout the phrase, throughout the song. I mean, our job a lot of the time, especially playing popular music or song-based forms, is to really bring the song out, right? There's a song as the basis, and our job is to realize that song and make it the best it can be. So coming up with an arrangement or writing a bass part can be a lot of fun, honestly. And changing how long your notes are is a really great way to make the verse feel different than the chorus, for example.
It felt like a different style.
Sorry, it felt like
yeah.
It can be, absolutely. I mean, I feel like when it cuts off a little more, it feels a little more hip hop. Whereas when it's sustained, I don't know, it's a little more pop or smooth pop. But you have all those tools sort of at your disposal. Space play.
Great, that was awesome. Anything else you want to share?
Anything else? I don't know. What more do you want to ask me about?
Well, something like, let's say, something harder, something more complicated. Like some of your favorite things that you do, let's say.
Some of my favorite things that I do?
Yeah.
I mean, I like checking out a lot of different kinds of music. And I like getting really familiar with the vocabulary of a certain style of music. Right now, I happen to be listening to a lot of salsa music, which I think is just absolutely fascinating. It's really rhythmically rich and harmonically rich, and at the same time it's really accessible, and people who are not necessarily musicians can totally get into it and dance to it. So I've been listening to a lot of that and trying to get inside that style and be able to play exactly the way that those guys play and gals, and understand, know as much as possible about it. And then I feel that sort of playing makes its way into my playing in other styles. So I've been listening to a lot of salsa, but then I'll go and play a rock gig or a pop gig, and suddenly I'm hearing things a little differently as far as the rhythmic context. So I think that the more music you can listen to, and the more thoroughly you can listen to it, get to know one song or one album or whatever really, really well, it can really enhance your playing.